Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. This is Janet from SugarShine Designs. Today I'm going to be using a wide variety of cardstocks from a company called CutCardStock, and I'm going to be also using some Heartfelt Creations products to make a beautiful wedding card and a matching box. This video will show you how to make both of these things so that you can create something beautiful with these products. I'm going to start by showing you my card base and how I created it. The papers I'm going to use is from the Window Scenes collection. It's a pretty pattern green paper. Also, I'm using 84-pound classic linen white pearl cardstock. It's very pretty, it's luminescent, and it's solid core. Then we've got some Neenah Royal Sundance 80-pound craft fiber cardstock. This is fantastic craft paper, you guys. It's so smooth. It has a little bit of fiber in there, so it's definitely a bit more interesting than most craft papers. Now this is the 5x7 card base in the white pearl, and on top of that I've got a 4.5 by 6.5 piece of craft, and then I've created two more mats, a 4.25 by 6.25 pearl, and then in the green the 4x6. Now on the back I've put some sticky pads and I've stretched a piece of iridescent ribbon, and this is going to help lift up that last couple of mats so that it has a little bit of height and additional interest. So this is quite a layered card. It's going to be very thick actually, and because of this I'm making a box to match for it, so I'll show you that at the end. Now I'm going to use the Scalloped Flourish Gateway die from Heartfelt Creations, and I'm only going to use the middle sections of this die, so it is the die that cuts out the pattern and then the border around each pattern. I'm going to do this on the white pearl again. It's such a pretty paper, and anything that it goes with really looks so nice and elegant. What I'll be doing is centering the border die around the pattern die so that we get a fairly even border all the way around and a nice cut for the whole piece. Now a little bit of washi tape will go on top just to make sure that everything stays in place when I run it through the die cutter. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about all the cardstocks that I'm using here today. All but the green Heartfelt Creations cardstock came from a company called CutCardStock, and they are a small independently run shop that sells cardstock. They sell all sorts of cardstock. They will also cut it, they'll score it, they'll fold it, they'll do all kinds of stuff for you. But if you don't want any of those fancy services, you can also just buy their cardstock, and they sell it in small quantities so that the average crafter can afford this beautiful paper and various types of cardstock. I mean, there's just a huge variety of types and colors and finishes. And the cardstock I'm going to be using in this card today is a good example of all the variety that you can find. I'm using some additional cardstocks. For example, this beautiful gold foil cardstock is marketed under CutCardStock's store name. It's 90-pound and it's beautiful. I took the border dies for these three pieces and cut them out with that gold foil cardstock, and I'm going to layer these on top of each other and glue them. Now I will just glue the edges. It's not really necessary to glue all the little bits inside. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and you'll see how beautiful that looks now. This is going to be placed onto my card base, and it's going to be a decorative mat more or less for the flowers I'm going to be putting on this card. So speaking of flowers, let's take a look at them. I'm going to be making some wild asters and Oakberry Lane blossoms. These are also obviously from Heartfelt Creations. I'll be using the matching dies too. So take a look at this beautiful vellum I'm going to be using. It's CTI clear translucent vellum. It's 48 pounds, so it's much heavier than the vellum that you're going to find at the big box craft stores. I've actually never worked with vellum that is this nice before. It stamps well, it embosses well, it will even work in my inkjet printer, although they recommend you test that on your printer before you do it. But what I'm going to do here with it is simply stamp it with Versamark ink, and then I'm going to apply Ranger Bridal Tinsel embossing powder. Now this is a mix of white and glitter embossing powders. So the white embossing powder helps to create a very strong image with the stamped pattern, but then the glitter in it gives it a lot of shimmer and shine, and you can see how pretty that is. Now make sure you warm up your heat gun well when you're doing this because you need to get it hot and move. Both vellum and this particular embossing powder is a little sensitive to heat. It will tend to scorch if you leave your heat gun in one place too long. So I just recommend making sure your gun is really hot before you start, and then just move along real quickly and it will all be fine. Once the embossing powder has cooled, you can go ahead and cut these out. I highly recommend the matching die that you can purchase separately, because it makes this so much easier, and the dies cut very accurately. You can see right through and get a perfect cut with them. So it's very easy to cut these flowers this way. So what I did was actually make 4 of these, 2 of the small and 2 of the large. I followed the exact same process and made 6 of the smallest Oakberry Lane blossoms, and you can see how pretty those are too. Now the next step is to shape them so that they look like actual flowers. So to do that, I use a thick, dense foam pad. It's about 3/4 of an inch thick, and I also use a ball stylus tool. Turn the flower upside down and work on the back of it. You can take your ball stylus and just push it from the tip of the blossom or the petal all the way to the end of the petal, and it will automatically start curving up for you. And you want to do this on all the petals. This is what's going to create kind of that concave petal look when you turn it over. So I've sped it up a little bit here so you don't have to get too bored, but you can see what I've done. And now I turn it over and push it down in the center, and you can see it does have that pretty concave appearance on the petals, and a much more 3D appearance than before I did any shaping. And I'm going to go ahead and do this same procedure with all 4 blossoms. You can see 2 that I have here together. These are the 2 smaller blossoms, and I'm going to put some art glitter glue in the center of one, and then put one on the top of it and just stagger the petals so that they don't overlap them but kind of stagger back and forth. And use my stylus tool to push the center in again. It will also help to continue shaping these flowers. I will do this exact same process with the 2 larger flowers as well. Next, I'll show you how I shape the Oakberry Lane blossoms. These are fairly small, but the process is still the same. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to use my ball stylus and push down in the blossom, in the petals. And I'm trying to create, again, a little bit of a concave with these petals so that they will, again, arch from the center out and then back down again. And so in the center, I will push down, and that also helps with that concave effect. Very simple and quick to shape these. So once I have all the flowers shaped, I'm going to finish them by putting some additional decoration in the centers. So Heartfelt Creation sells something called prills, and these are just really small micro beads. They might be actually foam. I am not sure what they're made of. They don't seem really hard and heavy enough to be beads, and they're not consistently all the same size, I wouldn't say. So I'm not sure what they're made of. Maybe they're plastic. I have no idea, but they're very, very tiny. And this particular color is called Guilt Trip, and it is an antique type gold. Now I push the prills into the glue, and then I'm going to set them aside to dry. Later on, I will flip these over and take off the excess prills. Now for the little Oakberry Lane blossoms, I'm going to do a similar thing, except this is micro beads. These are actual glass beads. I've had them for years. They were actually sold at the time to be used in scrapbooking, but I use them in my flower making today. I never did use them much in scrapbooking. But you can find these micro beads still at all the hobby stores and online. This particular kind is a silvery finish, which I thought would be a nice accent to all the gold being used in the card, and it's just a very small amount of silver. And I'll do the same thing as I did on the bigger blossoms. I'm going to push the beads into the glue. I'll have excess beads for sure that won't stick, but I'm going to let it all sit like this and dry, and then I'll tap off those excess beads when I get ready to work with them. So next you're going to see what I did after these beads have dried and I've taken off all the excess beads. I'm going to give these flowers just a bit more glitter, and that is by using the Floral Diamond Dust Crystal Twinklets. This is the white color. This is a chunky product and it gives beautiful shine to flowers. In fact, it was created for the florist industry using silk flowers. I will warn you though that this is basically crushed glass, so you need to be careful with it and handle it as glass. You don't want to rub this in your eye or spill a bunch of it on the floor and walk on it. It will not be good. So just be very careful and just keep in mind that it is glass. It isn't painful to touch or anything like that. It's not sharp, but again, just forewarning you, it is a crushed glass product. I love using it for my flowers. I also use this for snow on projects, and it's just beautiful. Now, of course, it looks a little weird right now because I have the white glue, but of course, art glitter glue dries clear. And so you can start to see the one on the right, which was done before the one on the left. It's already starting to get more clear in appearance. I'm going to do this very same process with the Oakberry Lane blossoms. In this case, because they're so small, I'm going to use tweezers to hold this over my crystals. And just like the other blossoms, I'll shake some on, tap off the excess, and then set them aside to dry. With all the blossoms, I will tap them again after they've dried just to make sure I get off as much excess crystal as possible. Well, next I'm going to begin on the leaves for this card. The leaf stamp was included in the Aster set, and I've stamped it with a very, very dark green ink. And then I'm using a finger dauber to spread a lighter green out. However, I'm trying to concentrate more in the center of the leaf and lighten it as I go out to the edges of the leaves. And it looks like a big old hot mess right now, but it's amazing. Once you get these out, they look pretty darn good. So I've got the die that goes with this, and I'm going to attach it again with some washi tape and cut it out. And I will have to do this 4 times because it's one stamp and one die, but it goes pretty quick. But let me show you what I mean. I'll pull this out and you can see really how great that looks. You'd never believe it when you look at that big mess before I cut them out. The cardstock I'm using for these leaves are 110-pound solar white cardstock, which yes, you can also get from CutCardStock. And flipping it upside down, I again use the ball stylus tool to create a bit of concave shape so that it is flat in the middle and then the leaves curve up and out and then back down again. And I'll do that with all 4 of them. Next, I'm going to be working on the sentiment, and I decided to make this on vellum as well. I don't have any Heartfelt Creations sentiments that would work with this, but I had an older stamp from Stampin' Up! That says Happiness Always, and it has a very pretty font on it, so I thought this would work well. And I'm going to stamp that with Versamark, and I'm going to heat emboss some gold embossing powder on it. Ultimately, this is going to be a fairly wide sentiment flag that's going to be 3D, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. But first I need to heat emboss the sentiment, as I mentioned earlier. And so I'll just apply, this is a Gold Ranger heat embossing powder, super fine detail, which is wonderful for any kind of stamped words. If you've struggled with your heat embossed lettering not being clear or being difficult to read, I highly recommend the super fine detail product that Ranger sells. The wording is really nice and crisp with it. Now here I'm going to use one of my favorite tools. This is the Cut a Line tool. It comes in a set of 2 from Sweet Petunia. The larger one is 15 inches long. The shorter one is 8, and they each have this center slit in them. And on each side we have 1/8 inch squares. So you can use this to cut a nice straight sentiment strip without worrying about the stamp. And this is because you can use the ruler to measure off the distance from the edge of your stamped sentiment and do that evenly on each side of the sentiment using that little slit there for your knife to travel in. And because you can measure the little squares on the ruler so nicely, what you've done is made a nice straight strip by this method. Regardless of how crooked your sentiment was, you can cut it, as I said, perfectly straight. Saves a ton of time, at least for me. I really enjoy these rulers. So now I'm going to put in the flag part on each end. You do that by snipping in the center approximately and then snipping from the outer edge to the middle. Doing this on both ends creates that nice fishtail appearance and is super quick and easy to do as well. So now I'm going to bring in my mini scoring tool and I'm going to put this at the top and align it so that the S on the always is right along a score line. I'll keep this strip as straight as possible in my board and then I'll count over 3 1/8 inch markings. 1, 2, 3, and then score. Then I'm going to move over 2 more 1/8 inches and score again. Then I'll go to the left side, line up the H on the happiness against a score line, and I'm just confirming that I did go 3 before I put it in on the other side. I've done that before where I make a mistake and didn't want to start over, so I just confirmed that, and then from there go 2 more over and put in that line. Now you can fold it. I did realize that I needed to rescore that first line. It wasn't very well done, so I just did that again. And then what I'm going to do is a Z fold here on each end. So you make a mountain fold, then a valley fold, and do that on each end. And what that does is cause the middle sentiment to pop up. And I'm going to attach it where the fold is. So it does a double benefit of not being able to see where the glue is. Plus, with it popping up, you can put it over some of the bulkier items and it will show through and gives you room. It will also lay flat because of the Z-fold part of it. So there's a lot of benefits to doing this, and I'd like to do it with vellum in particular. So I'm back to the card base and I'm going to attach these very pretty scalloped and lacy pieces on the top of this green cardstock. The first piece at the bottom I put on top of the ribbon, the second one, as you saw, I put underneath the ribbon, and this third piece on the top is going to go on top of the ribbon again. You'll also notice that I put this a good distance away from the middle, and that is because I need a lot of room for my flowers and I don't want to completely cover up this pretty lacy piece that I have at the top. So this will give me the room I need to accomplish all of that. Next, I'm going to turn this around because the flowers are going to be at the bottom of the card, and I'm going to start applying my leaves using a glue gun. I think the glue gun works well, the hot glue, for handling flowers and placing flowers. That's typically what I do with any flowers that I create on my cards. So anyway, the way that this card is going to be laid out is that there's going to be a bow at the top, the ribbon goes down, and then we've got the flowers at the bottom. It almost looks as if it's like a flower ball, but it's not quite round, as you'll see. However, it does sort of give that illusion. And the place to start are with the leaves, and then I'm going to put my 2 flowers like this, with the big flower overlapping the littler one a little bit. So we'll just apply that hot glue down. Another reason I like the hot glue for this is because it gives you some time to move things around. It sticks really well. And if you have slippery cardstocks or papers like this Vellum and the pearl cardstock, it will stick really, really well. And that's important. You want your flowers to stay in place. So now I've got the 2 main flowers on, and it looks very pretty that way, but I've got 4 more little flowers I'm going to attach. And what I'll do is put them in amongst the bigger flowers. I find it looks nicest if you put them on or near a leaf most times. It it is a little hard to figure out where to put them, at least for me. I don't see it in my brain like a lot of people, I guess, do, so I have to struggle a bit, or at least I feel like I do, to figure out where to put everything. But with everything else, or like everything else, practice makes perfect, and so I've gotten more comfortable with it over time. I would just say, if you struggle with this too, that you're probably being hard on yourself, because I find most of the time, if I don't like it at first where I put it, I'll step away and come back and I'll actually be quite pleased with it. So you can be your worst critic and sort of get in your way also with that. Now I've attached the bow, and I saw that I had a little bit of excess glue out there, so I quickly scooped that off with my tweezers so that won't show. This glue will dry clear, but still I don't want a big glop of glue showing when it's done. So now I'm figuring out where I'm going to put that last leaf. I definitely need it, I feel, for filler, but I also want to stay out of the way of my flag sentiment here. Like I said, it can overlap it a little bit because of the height, but I still have to keep that in mind and make sure that I don't put the leaf, smack dab in the middle of everything where that sentiment's going to go. If you've noticed, I've used tweezers a lot in this process. I use them to push the flowers and the leaves into the glue. It saves my fingers, so if that helps you, I'll just point that out. Now I'm going to use a very small line of hot glue on the sentiment right where those folds were, and put that down above the flowers and below the bow. And then I'm going to make sure that this folds flat once it dries. It is not that critical though, because I did decide to make a box for this, so this sentiment should not be ever flattened along with the flowers. So, but it's still a good idea. I think that's more habit than anything. I always make sure everything will lay flat. So now I'm going to take a little time and move around these Oakberry Lane blossoms to figure out where I want them to be. While I'm doing that, I just want to point out how pretty these flowers turned out using the vellum, and then also the bridal tinsel embossing powder, and finally the crystals on the top. They just really pop. They're beautiful. Also, when they're done this way, I think they look a lot like daisies, and I'm hoping, since it is summer and not fall, that whoever gets this card will look at these and also think they're daisies. I'll take this time too to let you know there is a complete list of supplies in the video description. You'll just look for that, and it's a link which will take you to a listing of all the different products used, including all the beautiful CutCardStock products and the Heartfelt Creation products. So once I get these flowers attached, I'm going to start working on the box that I've been mentioning a few times. I have a free construction sheet that I will share with you, and I've done an entire video about how to make a box of any size that will fit using a max of a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock, of course. But it allows you to measure the pieces that you're going to be trying to make a box for, and then it will calculate, once you add everything together, the top of the box and the bottom box and what those dimensions need to be in order to fit it. So I've got a link here to that video, and at that video you can also find the link to the worksheet. So I hope you'll check that out. Now this is the top of the box that I made following my directions. I cut it out and scored it as the directions told me to do. And before I cut it and make the actual box shape, I'm putting in some green pattern paper on the sides just to decorate it up. So as you can see, I did all three first. I just wanted to show you putting on the fourth one. I like to fold the sides away so I can see the border a little better. That just works for me. And I also like to put the decorated cardstock on this before I actually cut it up and make it into that box shape. It's just a little easier to work with. So my directions will tell you even how to cut these tabs. It'll show you by an illustration how to cut them. Because if you haven't made boxes for a while, or you've never made a box, it's sometimes hard to figure out where you're supposed to put your slits in, like I've just done here to create the tabs. One mistake I used to make a lot was I'd put these slots in the wrong place, like here. And by putting on your cardstock first, it helps you too to avoid that mistake, because you're obviously not going to cut into your pretty pattern paper. So another hint. And that's of course for people who don't make boxes that much. If you make boxes a lot, of course, you don't even have to think about it. You're so used to doing it. Once you've prepared the box to be made, you put glue on the tabs, and then matching up the top and bottom edges and also the side to side edges, you can attach to make a good, strong, and sharp corner. I recommend you use something to attach your pieces together while it's drying. I use these plastic coated paper clips. One thing I like about them is that because they're plastic coated, they're not going to leave any evidence of the metal. Sometimes I found that the metal paper clips would leave like a little gray behind. It's like it comes off of the metal itself. And obviously, especially using white, I don't want that to happen. So these coated paper clips work well. You of course can use anything that will hold these together while it's drying. And after I finish all four corners, I'm going to set this aside to dry before I work on the top part. Next, I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom, and I'm going to make the slits to create the tabs. The box calculator sheet that I use makes sure that my bottom part of the box is a little smaller than my top so that I have a snug fit and that everything goes on top nicely. So I've come back to my box top again. I'm going to remove my paper clips, and then I'm going to work on decorating the top of the box. I've matted up images and cardstock used in the card in this. So I've crafted the pearl, the green, gold, and then finally this pretty image on the top. Now this is the back side or the flip side of this green pattern paper. It has these views or scenes. So you can see where that came from. I just trimmed it off so that it would fit my panel. And now I'm going to go ahead and attach this to the top of the box. Now I just realized I didn't tell you what I made my box with, and that again was the Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock. It makes a very sturdy box because of that heavy weight. Before I put all the mats together, I did heat emboss in gold the sentiment that you see here, "Congratulations on your wedding." I think this box along with the card makes a perfect wedding keepsake, and I'm betting the couple will keep this around for years to come. Now I can go ahead and take off all those paper clips from the box bottom, and then I'm going to take a look at a card again. And I really love the shine, the iridescent ribbon, the gold. It is just such a perfect card for a wedding. And now I'll show you putting the box top on the box bottom for the first time. It's a little tight. It gets a little bit easier to manipulate as you use it a few times. But I'm not done with this box. I've got one more step, and that is I'm going to use my cut-a-line ruler again to find the center of the side of the front box panel. And I'm going to mark that with a little pencil mark. The reason being is that I'm going to put a little tab or a cut into this box so that there's room to put your thumb and a finger on each side of the box as you open it. This is a 5/8 inch circle punch, and I'm going to line that mark up with the little arrow on the back of my punch to get it as close in the center as possible, and then put that punch in. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side where I previously marked it, and punch that. And that's just big enough to add a little place for your fingers and your thumb. And that way it opens up even easier, and I love the way that looks too. It's even more professional in appearance, in my opinion. This is a super strong box because I made the sides to be the same height of both the bottom and the top. And that way you get the benefit of double strength 110-pound cardstock to support it. Now the box calculator worksheet that I'll share with you, you can create the top to be shorter than the bottom so you can see the bottom. But in this case I wanted them again to be the same height so that it had extra strength. And I'm really pleased with how it turned out. It fits my card perfectly. I'm going to put a little bit of tissue paper in here when I actually give it to someone, and it will really be an elegant presentation and special. I really only have one more thing to do, and that is to attach this little Oakberry Lane flower that I had left over. I thought it looked really nice here below the sentiment, and that finishes this beautiful box up. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate that. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment Consider subscribing if you haven't already, because I will be back soon with more projects, including cards, 3D objects, and other items. Take care, everyone. See you later. Bye.